Good afternoon and good evening to everybody. We are live here from St. Louis in Missouri on a cold, frigid morning. Hopefully all of you are staying warm, and thank you for joining. And I understand that this event is also being live streamed on COBA's Facebook and the International Business Career Conference Facebook. And we also have international partners from China, Finland, Germany, and Taiwan. So we have a whole global audience. And really the topic of our panel discussion today is strategic adjustment and risk management during the pandemic. And my name is Shekhar Sadasivam. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Origin Bioscience. I have been involved with the UMSL International Business School, working together with Gerald and Joe and the entire team there for the last few years, and has been an exciting and rewarding experience. And today I have the pleasure of inviting three global executives with a lot of international experience to talk about how they navigated the challenges during the pandemic, how they manage risks in each of their businesses. And each of their businesses is very different. And each one of them brings a different perspective to how they managed during the pandemic. And the format for the panel discussion is I'll first introduce each one of the panel members, and then we'll go into a Q&A session. Each one of you is welcome to type up your questions for the panel members. And at the end, we will have about 20 to 30 minutes for Q&A. Okay, so with that, I will start introducing each one of the panel members. The first is Chioni Linda Jing. She's the president and CEO of Genective. It's a technology joint venture between Lima Grain and KWS. They are the fourth and fifth largest seed companies in the world. And Genective currently focuses on developing transgenic traits of corn. And under her leadership, Genective has transformed from a Paris, France-based semi-vertical entity to a US-based operational company in 2019. It's headquartered here in the US in Champaign, Illinois, which is not too far from St. Louis. And she has actually been able to triple the size of her team during the crisis. So we'll definitely talk more about it during the Q&A. And she has held various executive roles with global responsibility in corporate affairs, research and development, and supply chain at Bayer, Crop Science, and Monsanto. And she has also had commercial roles in the US and Argentina for Monsanto. And prior to Monsanto, Linda worked at General Motors in the US, PricewaterhouseCoopers in China, and she's an alumni of Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern, Fudan University, and Suzhou University in China. And she's also served as an executive resident for the International MBA program at UMSL College of Business. And she continues to reside in St. Louis. So welcome, Linda, and thank you for making the time to join us today. And then Mike Kelly has long been associated with the International School of Business, has contributed many years of service, and he has 40 years of experience in global marketplaces, traveled internationally, and he's currently the president of the Kelly Global Metals, consulting for companies in North America, Asia, and Europe in the non-ferrous metals area. Previously, he served as the vice president of international business development for Metal Exchange Corporation, a manufacturer and global trader in aluminum, copper, and other non-ferrous metals in all forms. Working with Metal Exchange, Mr. Kelly oversaw the global expansion of trading business, opening offices all over the world, Zurich, Shanghai, and Sao Paulo, and most recently in Singapore in September 2018. Wow, it all sounds exciting. And earlier, he broadened the trading activities to include sales and purchases of other metals, working in developing economies in the Middle East, Latin America, South and Southeast Asia. So he really hasn't left any continent, and I'm sure he's planning a trip to Antarctica pretty soon. And David Stockton, a very, very broad background. And I will tell you about everything he does here in a minute, but it's a pleasure to invite him. And he's been associated with UMSL, International School of Business, for a long time too, contributing in many ways across many different, and I'm sure many of you have seen him in other venues. He's a vice president of the HJ family of companies, where he's responsible for general business management. HJ is a family-owned business which specializes in electrical power grid components, and David leads this team of 30 offices and factories around the world. Wow. Prior to joining HJ in late 2014, David worked as vice president of ABB. A lot of you in Europe definitely know he's an international company, where he was responsible for marketing and sales in 24 factories around the globe. He's lived abroad in Germany, Sweden, and traveled to more than 50 countries for business dealings. He earned an executive MBA from Stockholm School of Economics, holds electrical engineering degrees from both the Milwaukee School of Engineering and a technical university in Lübeck, Germany, and is a registered 200-hour yoga instructor. Welcome, David. Happy to have you on the panel. And so I think let's get started. But what we'll do is start with the first question, and in answering the first question, if each one of you can provide a context to what your business is, so people can understand a little bit more about the business that you're involved in. So when you provide your answer, they have a better context to how that all fits in. So I'll start with the first question, and I'll go through each one of the panel members. And I'll start with Linda for the first question. And it is, when did you first hear about the pandemic? And when did you first start seeing its impact on your business?
All right. Thank you, Shaker, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Actually, how I heard about the pandemic have everything to do with where I came from. I actually wanted to take this opportunity to say Happy New Year to everyone who actually celebrate the Lunar New Year. Today is the start, it's the Chinese New Year Day. It's also start the year of 4719, according to the lunar calendar. So, so obviously, fortunately or unfortunately, I heard a lot about the pandemic for about 2 months before even in the US, there's someone still saying it's gonna all go away very soon. Before the CDC is, at the time when CDC was still recommending not to wear masks. So as someone who came originally from China, I have been overwhelmed by the time of March of all the information that is what is happening, the great news and the sad news coming out of China. I actually think that helped with my company quite a bit because we were able to quickly tap into some of our supplier relationship with Asia. We had masks on stock, on site in March. Obviously, we asked everyone, you feel comfortable? This is disposable masks, not the medical grades that is we're in competing with the supply for the medical community at that time. So then we really start to see the impact on the business when Illinois started to shut down, which is the second week of March. I still remember because it's a Monday. The Friday before, we just had the grand opening of our global new headquarters in Champaign, Illinois. So we arguably became the last 100 people and above gathering even allowed in the University of Illinois Research Park, where Genactive is headquartered. So that is a big impact on the business. We were, as Shaker, you introduced the past year and a half, we were really building the facility, we were building our team, we grand opened our headquarters and boom, everything just stopped. I would say the real impact came from initially in March. You just don't know. Nobody knows what to do. We went down a very stringent restriction on ourselves. So first off, we didn't push for agriculture as essential business. This is going back to a little bit what Genacto is doing. We are technology developer of transgenic traits, like Shaker described. Transgenic traits, aka GMO seeds, genetically modified organism technology implication in seeds. With the modification of certain gene, we will make the crop resistant to bugs, make the crop more efficient in water utilization, make them compete better with the weeds that is competing for nutrition and everything from the soil with the crop. So we believe we are a little bit too far a stretch, saying we are in, yes, we are in agriculture, but we are not in the frontline packaging food, or we are out there farming, right? So we didn't push for that. We basically have a self-imposed minimum basic operation. We essentially stopped everything that we can stop doing on site, and having people really just start work from home as much as possible. And that obviously have caused some productivity loss. It also make it very, very difficult because we tripled the team size, but we continue to bring, that means we have new people coming on onto the team on a regular basis. People really need to spend time together, getting to know each other and get our work protocols, flows worked out. But that has been very, very, very difficult. Um, I would say the good thing what we had, so we the good thing we had the PPE. All we need essentially is mask for our operating environment. And the other thing was we were well equipped for the technology front. I should say just a little bit what Shaker mentioned. Genactive was used to be based in Paris, France. It was a virtual organization. And then we did a Genactive 2.0 transformation, which lead us become a US-based company headquartered in Champaign. Also come along, we did a lot of other transformation, including IT. And that time we saw Genactive going forward with what's going on the IT fields, we need to be a lot more agile, flexible. Actually, in late 2019, beginning 2020, we've got everyone laptop. We get everyone work cell phone, and with a good service plan, work cell phone even have good enough personal hotspot that will allow people to access file back to the company if they are in a place that doesn't have internet connection, or even participate in video conferencing through Teams. So we were actually a little bit ahead of the game. Again, now we wanted, if we look at the Genactive, we wanted organization to be very agile, flexible. We didn't think about there was going to be pandemic, and that's going to make lots of people working from home. So that helped to have PPE. We were technology enabled. Then gradually over the next couple of months, as things keep going up and down in the US, we continue to evaluate really how do we keep the operations going. Obviously, we need to put people on the safety first. So we still encourage everything that can be done offsite to be done offsite. But we also figured out there are certain times we do need to connect as a team. We actually did additional team building activity, having some of the folks together. Essentially, we rent a 400 people conference room for 20 people to be in person in order to really make people feel safe, but still being able to be together, because this is a brand new team. Every month, on average, every month we're hiring a person to be on board. And then later on, we figured out a shift arrangement. Basically, we will have a pretty strict shift. Half of the team on site, half the team's not on site. There is a very strict 1 hour in between. So we give time for people to really exit, for a cleanup to be done. I would say we went through a period of time figuring out what I'm gonna do, and yeah, there are still certain things we can do. I'm very happy to report the majority of the hiring Shaker mentioned was actually gone through pandemic. I really believe it is the key is to make sure first people are healthy and safe. People feel comfortable to come to work. People feel comfortable to have a combo of offsite and offsite keep going, and actually really focusing on the things we need to deliver on Genactive again, because with a growth stage company hiring, how do you hiring people? Hiring is already difficult. How do you hire virtually and onboarding virtually have the people start to work without even go on site? I would say we had the most extreme case where an employee already worked for Genactive for 3 months. Then he went on site. You actually see the company for the first time. I would going back maybe when we get into some of the people elements later. I would say it is really, it's a lot of in Chinese we say you're crossing the river touching the stone. You basically you figured it out how when there's no bridge, you go across a river stone by stone. The stone is at bottom under the water. You test things out. But we've been through this pandemic, we've been doing very well, because we also during the pandemic we finished our first full year of being on Genactive 2.0. We essentially actually met or exceeded on our goals. We now have a plan going forward. We'll see how this pandemic evolved. I read in the news for the first time, it seems like certain indicator about the turning points are coming. But again, I think people and safety first is going to be continue to be fundamental for Genactive in order for us to be functioning under the pandemic situation.
Thank you, Linda. That was very informative. We'll go with David next. If you can briefly comment about the business, and then also provide us a perspective on when did you first hear about the pandemic and what were some of the initial impacts on the business? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Shaker. Good morning, everybody. So our business is quite different than Linda described with their business. We are a more established company. We've been around for over 50 years, but we're still very much in a growth mode. And so I can really empathize with a lot of the comments about hiring and growing. And we grew 20% from in 2019. We had expectations for another 20% last year. And very fortunately, I can say that we grew about 10% last year, but it was, we fought and scratched and clawed for every bit of that 10% last year. So we really started hearing about this in January. We have an operation in Tianjin, China as well. And so there had been some comments about it in late December. But in January, we really started having in-depth conversations about what's going on, making sure that our people in China were safe as well, taking a lot of safety measures to try to keep them as safe as possible, keeping up with the latest news and regulations. And it was hour by hour, seemingly minute by minute sometimes as well. So it was very complicated. We run a manufacturing business, and so for us, everybody talks about remote work, and that's wonderful for the people that can do that. But an employee that's working in a factory can't work remote. We're making products, and we make products for the electrical industry, for the grid. So here in St. Louis, we have Ameren Electric, for example, and we sell to companies around the world. And a lot of what we've been working on is development and enablement of renewable energies, specifically wind and solar. And so as we continue to invest in this, and there's a lot of infrastructure infrastructure projects going on. There's a lot of investment projects going on, and we had to be present to be able to do that. And so as this moved forward, there were a lot of questions saying, how in the world are we going to keep 4 factories and all of our offices around the world going in the midst of a pandemic? And I think Linda's analogy was perfect. We were walking through the river blind, and our toes became very sensitive to the feel of rock underneath us, and sometimes it was not rock. There were mistakes along the way, but we did it by committee. We had a group of us executives that would sit in a huge conference room, like Linda mentioned, to try to keep safe, and talk through every day. How do we do this? We had quite a bit of technology to be able to keep up with working and communicating, but again, coming back to the factory element of things, and how do we keep them safe there? Masks by that time were just largely unavailable. We actually put together a homegrown mask manufacturing project with some of our factory employees, and we hired people to make our own HJ designed masks, and we made thousands of masks. So just all kinds of weird things. I mean, all of us sitting around looking and reviewing different mask designs, and is this the correct number of layers on a mask, and what kind of material is this, and how should we sew that for comfort? It was stuff that an engineer never thinks about normally, but it was quite the interesting year and challenge. But beyond that, from a business perspective, it's been really challenging with employee attendance in a manufacturing environment, keeping people safe in that environment as well. But also just from a supply chain and logistics perspective, it's been exceedingly difficult. As different suppliers around the world have shut down, either due to attendance, to government regulations, to their inability to get raw materials. The shipping lines have been overwhelmed and enormously, yeah, Mike's rolling his eyes too. To try to find a container from overseas to the United States today, if you can find one, you're lucky. And if you do, you'll pay 3, 4, 5 times what we were before the pandemic started. So that's been one of our biggest ongoing headaches and challenges in the business is supply chain and logistics of materials.
Thank you, David. So wide span across each one of your functions, and looks like you navigated it well. We'd definitely like to hear about it more later on.
There's a few more gray hairs, but generally pretty good.
Hopefully it grew longer too. Mike, we'd like to get your perspective.
Yes, I'm going to comment from a metal exchange perspective. I still consult extensively for them, and we're involved in the decisions that were made at the time. Metal Exchange is a company that has manufacturing facilities here in the United States, in Kentucky, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. And across those facilities, we'll have 700 people or so in manufacturing and assembling operations. The trading operation is the other part of the company. It's headquartered here in St. Louis. It's embedded with the headquarter personnel. So here in St. Louis, we'll have about 100 people at Westport Plaza, the vast majority of which is open office arrangement. And out of there, we run our offices in Shanghai and Singapore and in Zurich and that kind of thing. And like Linda said, and as David said, the first indication we got was from our office in Shanghai saying, we're getting phone calls and our suppliers are saying they can't get product to the ports, and our customers are saying they can't get product out of the ports. And so what this got down to is some of the ports were locked down. Some of the ports were not locked down, but you couldn't get a truck. You had a lot of truck drivers in China who were afraid to haul across certain areas. We had suppliers out in far west China where the driver would have to come through Wuhan en route, and you couldn't do it. So that was shut down. And so we very quickly saw the Chinese business, I won't say it went to zero, but it was down 70 to 80% very quickly. We couldn't get product out, we couldn't get product in. And so that happened very quickly. The office, while Wuhan shut down very dramatically, as everybody knows, Shanghai never shut down. And so our office in Shanghai, we were, as David said, we're in daily, more than daily contact with them to make sure that they were staying safe. They got a rotation going among them. There's only 4 or 5 of them. And they said, and they were all, luckily, they were already equipped with laptops that they could do the business because they traveled so much. And so they would just say, who's going in today? Are you going in? I'll go in. The rest of us will stay home. Interestingly, similar to what David was talking about, the person that has to go into the office most in China is the person who handles transportation and invoicing, because many documents in China, if you're going to present things to the bank, if you're going to sign over bills of lading, has to have the official company chop on it. And the chop exists in the office, and you have to have that ready to put onto the official document. So that person is in the office more, almost always alone, but handling the official documents doing that. Other than that, we stay in touch with them. They avoid going out. Shanghai is obviously very large and very dense. And so social distancing outside the office is possible. They feel a bit, I would say, confined because they can't go anywhere. But they are safe, and we have assured them that they are on the team and we're doing that. I would say the second effect very quickly came in Singapore. As Shaker said, we'd opened our office in Singapore relatively recently. We already had established customer base in Southeast Asia, but we were expanding on that. We had relocated a US national into Singapore to jumpstart that operation, and we were actually interviewing the first locals to see if we could bring in the support people to do that. And very quickly, as that evolved, Singapore, I think they were probably the first, absolutely cut off all flights to China. They just said, no, nothing more, nothing in, nothing out, done. Then as cases popped up elsewhere, they just cut off additional flights. Effectively, Singapore was really isolating itself into a cocoon. And so we're talking to our guy in Singapore, and we're saying, what are you hearing? He's saying, well, I got customers and suppliers saying, do not come to this office. We allow no outside visitors, nothing comes in, nothing goes out. And our business is very much one, kind of like David, we build this on personal relationships. We know what your business is. We're going to supply you what you need. We're going to take out what you produce. That's what we do. If you don't have the ability to talk to those people on their sites and what they're doing, you lose the vast majority of what we do. We can't build it any further than we got it. Flights were disappearing out of Singapore. We made a pretty tough decision to say, okay, Craig, fly home. Just come back to the US, put things into hibernation. You can still talk to all those people on the phone, get them out of there. That was actually a very lucky thing that we got him out of there. What we did, he came out at the end of March, and it would have been much more difficult for him to get home if we had not done that at that point. Now, to this day, he works kind of screwball hours because he's talking to all the people in Southeast Asia, and he's sitting here in St. Louis. But in fact, we've kept that going. So I would say those were the first indications. Those were the first effects on us. Business went down. And then I would say, before and you can talk about whether you want to go into the actual adjustments we've made, Shaker, but the first one, early on decision we made as a lesson from 2008 during the financial crisis, when business drops off the table, we said, we're not laying anybody off. We're not telling anybody to go home. Everybody's going to stay fully employed. Just back up, take a breath, and let's see how long this lasts. And because if you lose, as Linda was saying, if you lose an appointment or an employee today, finding a new one is very difficult. And so we said, we've got to keep everybody we've got. And so we went out to all the plants, we went out to all the offices. We said, look, hold your breath, tell us what's going on, let's keep communicating, but everybody's got a job. Don't worry about that part of it. And I think that has helped us because as we came through the 6 months, everybody could focus on what adjustments you had to make to COVID and not worry about, I got to make another call or I got to get this business done. Just focus on getting this right because there's no business to be done anyway right now. I would say generally that helped because we had people who were able to sit around and think about what are we going to do, how are we going to re-engineer, how are we going to re-lay out the office, whatever we're going to do. But keeping everybody employed, I think, was a key part of what we did. But it was a lesson learned from 10 or 12 years ago, because you said, oh, I got to lay people off because I got no income. We said, we've been in this business 50 years. We're going to be in this business. Let's just keep everybody employed. And I have to say, people have stepped up. The people on plant floors, people in the office, everybody has stepped up and participated. So from that respect, I think the people in the company have become closer. But that was a key decision early on. Now, if you want to go into actual adjustments we've made and how we've looked at budgeting and forecasting, all that, we can talk about that as you want, Shaker. But those would be my first comments.
Oh, great. No, thank you very much, Mike. I think that's exactly where we're going next. It looks like all of you had some kind of an early warning on the COVID situation, just because of how globally you were connected. For Linda, obviously, coming from China and having close connections there, she learned about it early on. And David and you, Mike, were able to, based on your global operations, learn about it based on just the initial indications of business falling off and everything. So maybe the next question, I'll go to start with David. If you carry the risks associated with the supply chain, and you talked a little bit about, having everybody in manufacturing come to the factory floor, sales falling off, how did it affect the revenue profile and your cost profile through the year? And then how did you end up? How did all of 2020 end up? You did give us some indication of how 2020 ended up, but it'd be great if you can give us some perspective on the profile and then what you had to do, both from an internal supply chain logistics manufacturing perspective to actually customer facing operations. How do you manage all that to get a 10% growth in 2020?
So in retrospect, when I'm thinking about this, we really started to feel the effect probably in, let's say, in late March, maybe early May, April. I think up until that point, it was something that, at least in the United States, we were largely naive in looking at this and saying, well, maybe it won't be as big of an impact for us. I guess that was a hopeful naivete, but it came. And when it did, there was a lot of deep-rooted concern and just unknown about what to do. And so I remember walking through our office, and phones are usually ringing off the hooks, and people are chatting back and forth, and it was quiet, and people were still there. I said, what's going on? And they said, well, none of our customers are at the office, so none of them are calling us, and we're getting a few emails, but we don't know how to even correspond with them yet outside of email. Customers didn't know how to send us purchase orders. They weren't in the office. And so what's going to happen with their business? They're in a critical infrastructure with the electric grid, and they have orders, but are customers going to take the orders? And so we were a part of that supply chain as well, that was just enveloped in uncertainty. Thankfully, that lasted for about a month, and business really started to pick up. People adjusted and were coming back to say, we're still going to make transformers. We're still going to make switchgear. We still need your components and your materials to do that. People started getting laptops at home. People started using cell phones. And so it was all this wonderful technology that we've all had forever, but just acclimating that for home use with business. And so for us, we saw a slowdown in orders for about 2 to 3 months that had us pretty nervous. In that time period, we also went back and said, no, we're not going to lay anybody off. In fact, we were still trying to hire. Remember, before this, we had record low unemployment. And so we had been fighting and scratching to hire more people before all of this started. And then we came into a situation where we wanted to hire people, but nobody wanted to leave the house because they were afraid of a pandemic, to come for an interview or to work in a factory, and rightfully so. So we went from one really difficult hiring situation into the next difficult hiring situation. And that was complicated for us. But from a revenue perspective, thankfully, the second half of last year was just, it really boomed. We were also able to, we've long had a business principle of keeping large amounts of inventory. And coming from a big Fortune 500 company before, where cash flow and inventory are everything on a balance sheet and on a quarterly report, and coming into a family-owned business where the owners say, I'll just keep my money here because the bank interest is nothing. So I put it into inventory that I can convert to sales dollars. And thankfully, that really helped us through this. We keep anywhere from 3 to 6 months of inventory on materials. So we were able to absorb and to continue producing in spite of shortages, in spite of logistics challenges. And that helped us in this situation to gain more business and to go out to customers and say, yes, we have product available. Projects which had been outsourced before to Asian countries, for example, China was shut down for several months. India was struggling like hell for several months. And so a lot of those products, people said, we've got to have them. And I think it also changed the philosophy in saying, we can't just put everything into an overseas basket. It certainly happened for us, and saying, yes, we need to do that from a competitive perspective. Yes, there are opportunities there, and yes, we continue to pursue that. But there is a value and a contingency and liability mitigation by having some of that manufacturing capability here locally. And so that helped us. We actually built a factory in Mexico during the pandemic because of this. So it was really huge strategic changes for us in how we continue supplying from our business in the midst of it.
Thank you. Mike, if you can share your perspective on Metal Exchange experience.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as David said, when March hit, it was March. The China business fell off the table, just went off the table. It was slower to hit in the US, but it did start coming in. And I would say that the orders generally, when we looked at them, fell off about 70%, which is a shocking number when you got running a manufacturing operation. The trading volume decreased, I think, equally, but traders operate in a different environment because they're supplying copper and aluminum to various places. And in the plant environment, because we run operations that actually do conversions. So we're running around aluminum that's 1500 degrees Fahrenheit. You're running high heat operations. Those operations already have an awful lot of air movement, and it's air moving around very hot things. So that part of it wasn't as bad as we thought. The production end of it was okay. Assembly and packing required some re-engineering, required to make sure that we had people spaced out and properly protected. But that really wasn't a hard part about it. The office environment was interesting because, like Linda did, we quickly went to a red-blue team, 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out. But really, even on the 2 weeks you're in, you're not in. You're only in there if you have to be in there. Like I said, if you got to sign a document, if you have to do that kind of stuff. Plexiglass all over all the areas that we needed to put those up. The biggest thing we had to do was get people. All the traders already had laptops, but the administrative people don't take stuff home. They work off their screens. You get somebody who's working in transportation or in finance, who works on 2 or 3 screens with a big spreadsheet. You can't do that on a laptop. It just doesn't work. And so there was some difficulty and effort to get that kind of equipment in the right people's homes in the right time so they could sit there and look at 3 3 screens to get a spreadsheet going. And again, that requires the company to have a lot of confidence in that person. I'm putting $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 worth of equipment in your house. You're kind of saying, I'm counting on you to keep doing your job. So again, it's changed the relationship, the work environment in the company. I would say what's interesting is the difficult parts of doing that, getting people to work from home. I would say the first one was IT. We have a proprietary trading system and operating system that we build and maintain ourselves. The IT department sits there with big servers and they got screens and they got different software and they don't do that at home. And now you got to say, how do you get the IT people functional out of this office environment where you've got an awful lot of investment and power and all of a sudden you're scattered? I would say IT was the first difficulty. Second difficulty is accounting and finance. You've got people who in the office have direct contacts with the banks, who have authority to transfer funds and do all that stuff, but it's all based on the office contact. How do you get that authority transferred back to the people who are sitting in St. Charles and not sitting in the office to do that kind of thing? HR was particularly difficult, as Linda said. How do you onboard somebody? How do you explain the company? They can't meet their colleagues. They don't know what they're doing. What do you do? Onboarding is particularly hard. But what we found interestingly is with COVID, we had a certain number of people who wanted to retire. They said, you know, I'm 63 or I got comorbidity or whatever I want to do. Trying to figure out how to put together a retirement package and get them out the door, I would say was equally as difficult as getting people into the company. It was a very difficult kind of thing. The other place I would say was difficult was the transportation. We run our own fleet domestically, but we import and export extensively. On any given day in the United States, we'll probably on a transportation basis have 100 to 150 truckloads moving. So this is from LA to Baltimore to, we got our own fleet plus outside contractors, 100 to 150 trucks a day. Think of the paperwork involved in that. You've got bills of lading, you've got weight tickets, you've got all of that stuff. It's going from Baltimore to Omaha, it's going from LA to Vegas, it's doing all that kind of stuff. Transportation got into really a difficulty because you've got all these documents that got to get around and the people have to work those documents again across screens. And then you throw in, and I'm sure David's aware of this, in addition to the international transportation difficulties, back in December of 20, let me think about this. No, actually in December of 19, early 20, the administration put in a system where they said, drivers who are going to get tested for drugs are going to get caught. Previously, the driver would get caught, he'd quit working at one trucking company, go to the next one, and just omit the fact that he got caught drugs in the previous one. It would never appear in his resume. So the government set up a central workplace. If this guy gets caught, put him on the central registry. In a very quick motion, that took 30,000 truck drivers off the road. 30,000 truck drivers went, done. All of a sudden, you didn't have enough drivers. And now you got drivers saying, I'm 65, I'm fat, I eat poorly, I got a heart condition, I'm getting out too. And so domestic transportation got to be very, very difficult as well. And so that part of it got to be kind of screwball. I would say other than that, like I said, keeping everybody around was good. We had a 6-month, kind of like David, we had a 6-month crevice where we fell off the table and we're at 30 to 40% of budget. By the time we got to September, finally the plant would say, my number this week was actually above budget. I have an order book that's more than we budgeted for. And since September, it's just gone up and now we're at 120% of budget. So it was a crevice and now recovery. But boy, when you're down in that crevice, that's no fun. So we had to adjust all that. The other thing I would say is, and David might know this, we had to adjust our production lines. So what are you making? So our order book isn't a 2-ton piece for a truck trailer. It's a 2-pound piece for a deck that somebody's putting on their house. It's not a big piece for an automobile. It's a piece for a bicycle. And so suddenly, instead of making one big one, you're making 100 little ones. Changes your whole engineering and productivity thing. And I'll just give you one example here, which you'll all appreciate. You might have noticed early on in this thing is that some of your favorite beverages were not appearing in cans. What happened is that there wasn't an aluminum shortage. There was plenty of aluminum. There was the ability to produce cans. It was can shortage. Why? If you go to the bar and you get a beer out at the bar, that's out of a keg. A keg holds about 160 glasses. That means 160 cans had to be produced for every keg that wasn't consumed at the bar. The system isn't designed to multiply 160 times up. And suddenly Coca-Cola is saying, I'm not making Minute Maid orange juice. I'm going to only put Coke. I want Coke in the few cans I got. I want Coca-Cola. Anheuser-Busch says, I want Budweiser. And so there was a shortage of cans because people weren't drinking at bars and restaurants anymore. That's kind of typical for our manufacturing too, that we had to get everything down to smaller pieces, more pieces. There was a big adjustment there. I would say now we're back up above budget. It's going to be a recovery, but when you got a divot that's 6 months deep, there's a loss there that you're going to have to do that. I would say the final thing goes back to what Linda was saying, is that in business, and David knows this too, in business, you have to constantly build new customers and new suppliers. It's a constant adding them. People are coming in, going out, giving it. Adding a supplier customer in this environment has been just crazy difficult. To try to go visit, to try to find the new person, to try to find the new customer supplier, highly, highly difficult. It has been, I won't say impossible, but the numbers have been very small. So we have been, I would say, running while our order book's up. We're running off relationships from the past. And you say gradually that relationship's going to go like this. You got to find new people. I mean, we've been on this downward road. So we're running off, we're kind of coasting downhill on our old relationships, but we're telling ourselves this can't last. So there's a general degradation of that. And it can only go on for so long. I would say, like Linda said, we've learned that we can do this. It's difficult it's become hard to work hard. I guess I would say that. But it's totally lower productivity when we're sitting at home doing this than anywhere else. So I would say that'd be where I was going with that.
Thank you, Mike. It's a lot of things that we take for granted in terms of how a business runs or how the products are used. And all of a sudden, everything comes into stark relief. You realize that, you know, right from running terminals for shipping to actually sending out cash, it all happens under a corporate umbrella. And doing it from home is a completely different game. Linda, you bring a different perspective, you know, from David and Mike. So if you can tell us, what did you see in terms of what you had planned in terms of revenue, and what did the profile look like all through 2020? Obviously, you grew very successfully your team. So please share some of your experiences.
Yeah, I say I'm on the lucky side. It's challenge to restart a company, restart up in the pandemic. But I pretty much only dealt with the one end of the equation. Our revenue prospect decide on what our R&D pipeline can produce. We do have, I do not have immediate revenue pressure yet, but there is a plan by what time we will be generating revenue. So I deal with only the cost side so far. I would say my cost is my budget. My budget depends on what my parent company, the two stakeholders are willing to pump into the research activity and GeneActive. That does, I experience the pressure. As a result of that, we our budget, which is our operating cost and our capital investment, it still grow in the last year, but not as our growth. I will have to say between March and June, when typically my annual budget is developed and drafted to finalized, I was asked to cut down some of the growth. But still, we had increased the investment because we need to continue to hire people. We need to continue to buy our equipment. So on that front, I feel I'm lucky. I didn't have that immediate revenue pressure directly. But on the cost side, we actually we had some savings. It's there is a delay of hiring. I would like it to be more than 300%, but it's harder to get people in place. and it's harder to move. We have lots of experienced hires, people moving with their family from Omaha, from North Carolina to Champaign, Illinois. It's a move is a big deal in normal time, moving a whole family, buying, selling houses and all that. Now we know there's also a shortage of truck drivers. It has been, so we were delayed a little bit. We had some saving. And then the biggest one is we didn't have any international travel, domestic, no. And utilizing the technology platform, we done all the meetings virtually. I would say it has its benefit and the downside as well. The virtual platform actually allowed more people to participate. In the past, if I need to go to Paris for a meeting, that's the board meeting perspective, probably it's only I will go. Would my CFO go as well, right? You debating. And all of a sudden, if your board meeting is actually virtual, you actually have more people to participate. So I would just say it make it more inclusive, it make meetings more exclusive and more frequent. But it's I'd say sometimes you feel that communication is not that as effective. Particularly, again, this goes back to my team continue to grow. Everyone is new. It takes people to sit side by side and to really talk, to know each other and to know how we operate. So I do not know. I guess I will have to see how my team operating all side by side a while to compare what did we really lose, what did we gain. So I do know we saved a bunch of money in travel. We saved some people cost because of hiring, again, with 300% increase. I still feel some were delayed. I hope we can have people coming in a bit earlier. So maybe just a note to the students out there. You know, when I was a student, I was always worried. Well, yeah, when there's a crisis, is the company gonna shrink down and delay hiring, canceling hiring, and all that? I hope you learn. Business will continue to grow. The employers is as worried as you, maybe even more worried than you in getting you onto the job. So keep that in mind as you doing your job search effort.
Thank you, Linda. It looks like all of you definitely put people first in terms of taking care of them, not letting them go, and taking a very long-term perspective. There is a question from one of the participants, and the question is there any decision that you made during the pandemic that you would make differently? You know, was there a decision that, you know, looking back now, you would say, I wish I'd made that particular decision a little bit differently? And maybe Mike will start with trying to get your perspective. There's something that you feel that maybe if we had done it this way, we could.
I mean, I think it's kind of like Linda said, everybody was feeling their way. Everybody was looking for best practice. Everybody was saying, what are you hearing somebody else is doing? Bring everything you're hearing from everybody you talk to all over. What are you bringing? And so I would think and err on the side of caution and err on the side of safety. I would say no. I would say I can't think anything that we said, you know, that was a bad idea. We should change that. I can't think of anything because we were always on the conservative side of people safety and knowing that we're going to continue the business. I can't think of anything that where we would consider it a let's look for a redo. Not at this point, no.
Okay, very nice. What about you, Linda? Is there anything that you felt generative? Yeah.
I was thinking hard, right, as I was listening to Mike and think of the question, if I can redo it again, if I still only had the information I had and each and every given time, I will still make the same decisions.
Okay, very admirable. What about you, David?
I went ahead and responded to this in the chat. I'm sorry, I jumped the gun, but
Okay.
in retrospect, one thing I would have done was I would have bought stock in Zoom much earlier. Good Lord.
Yeah.
So that was a miss. But you know, I agree with Linda and Mike that the information we had, I'm proud of our team for diligently diving into this, and we were studying and researching and listening and asking and networking and talking, and you know, I got this. We had a group chat going on, and we're sending information all hours of the day and night to each other so that we're all abreast of what's going on and trying to make decisions. The one thing that I wish we would have done differently was I wish we would have planned for the worst and hoped for the best. It seems like we're constantly saying, well, maybe this will last another 3 months. Maybe this will last another 6 months. And it was always planning for that. And looking at this now, we say this is a multi-year situation, and I think we still have another year, 2, 3 years of ramifications coming from this. And so I remember saying early on, you know, we're not going to see the end of this until 2020, and people really got upset with me for even insinuating that. Turns out I really underestimated that. So I think that's something that we would have made some decisions different if we would have taken that approach of saying, this is going to happen for another year or 2 years, and how can we adjust accordingly?
Yeah, no, it's a very, very thoughtful perspective. You know, that's a normal human tendency, at least from my perspective, is, you know, this thing is going away. You know, we want to get past it and go on to, you know, normal as quickly as we can. And, you know, planning for the worst, but hoping for the best is definitely a better perspective to take. And David, you touched upon the technologies like Zoom and Google Meets, or everything that people, I mean, I was not aware of a lot of these technologies prior to the pandemic. And Linda, can you help us understand, did you, a lot of these technologies for conference calls or you know, managing the business remotely, were there things that you were aware of before that you had in place? You talked about, you know, building the business for being adaptive and flexible. Are there some of these things that you had planned initially, or you had to put a lot of these things during the pandemic in place?
You're right, Shaker. We were lucky. I think we had the right thinking as we rebuilt Genactive and Genactive 2.0. We wanted our IT to be above a few notch over our parent company. This is not to saying that things about our parent company. We just know we are operating in the US, and we are doing the research that no other places in both parent company are doing. We have to be agile, have to be nimble. So that's we made that push for everyone be able to work from anywhere, any given time. So that is our IT infrastructure with the computer, cell phone. We were all on clouds for security reason. We were behind on some other processes like our expense report, our vendor invoicing. When I started, there was a lot of paper. It was lots of paper based. So literally people were expense report preparing, somehow the signing was from one desk to another one and someone signed. And our payment, everything is actually handled offsite. So those papers actually got mailed out. It wasn't a good practice anyways. Then by the time it's March, like who want to go to the post office? Or then we gradually get into, we scan everything. So PDF, email, we still don't like it. That was when we made a push. We say we need to get onto SAP and Concur. So our expense report, our vendor invoicing, payment, it is all it's all in the Concur system. It used to be, yeah, gosh, a few weeks for the one expense report to be born, to be killed, finished. Now it is a couple of minutes. So I would say that is one thing we will force a little bit to see, really, let's get rid of all the papers.
Nice, very good. And Mike, from your perspective, any new technologies that you adopted that during the pandemic?
Not that I can think of. We had just actually transferred over. We had been on WebEx, and WebEx you pay a you pay a fee for WebEx, and we actually had started running our fees up so high, we said we had to find something cheaper, and we had just migrated over to Zoom. And so everybody was kind of getting used to Zoom anyway, and so we've done that. And so I would say no. Other than that, obviously, we've all become more knowledgeable how to do Zoom. That I can't think of any new technologies other than, like I said, we just had to spread the technology out away from the office into the home so people can keep the business parts of the business running. That's it.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'll take another question from one of the participants. And this is, how do you take care of both the personal health of the workforce and the business health together? Do you, and I think David, you're a good person to start off in this. Looks like you always do that balancing between yoga and your busy schedule with business. You can give us your perspective on how you manage it personally, but also how you manage it at HJ companies.
Yeah, I think that's there's the holistic view on it, and then there's also the from a corporate management perspective of things too. Personally, I really enjoyed that benefit of COVID, that I wasn't traveling all the time. I enjoyed being home. I had a garden with my wife for the first time ever. We we had a routine of things, and so there were some things that were really good for my personal health in that time too. From keeping our employees and the business safe, and I think this is a fundamental and philosophical question that is still being asked in the world. And if we look at places like Germany, my wife's from Germany, so I hear a lot of news about that, and they just extended their lockdown again. And there's a lot of frustration being built up, and people aren't able to work, people aren't able to leave their homes. We have an office in Barcelona. They couldn't leave their apartments for months. And so I think while we're trying to protect the well-being in the community, in that case, there were a lot of questions about mental health, mental well-being. I think we've seen that exacerbated here as well, and the glaring lack of mental health care professionals, facilities. I think it's been great that we can do telehealth now. That's been an awesome technological advancement in this. That I can see my mental health care professional or my physician over telehealth now, instead of having to go through an office. So there's been this up and down. For us in our factory, again, we went to our employees and said, we want to keep you safe. If you're not here at work, then we have a certain period of time that we can pay. We can't do that indefinitely. So we want to work with you to try to keep you employed. And our people were enormously grateful to be able to come in, and because, a disruption of 1 week without pay is a big deal. That's a whole family that's impacted, and that starts to impact the whole community. So like Mike discussed in the manufacturing world, we've set up clearance spaces and social distance spaces, and we've put up plexiglass barriers and masks and shields and cleaning crews, et cetera, et cetera. We put in UVC light in all of our air handling equipment to try to better filter. We went to all HEPA filters. All things that I think are good for employee health overall, but we've taken the perspective to say we want to try to keep people as safe as possible, but to keep them employed and to maintain their livelihoods and their families, to support them as they have kids at home and they're trying to figure out how in the world to do remote learning. And you've got two working parents, and the grandparents don't want to have the kids because what if one or the other gets COVID? I mean, this has been real practical stuff that's impacted families. And so we don't have all the right answers, but we've been working with the people and communicating with them and saying, come talk to us about what's going on. And we want you to be a part of our HJ family, and we want to treat you like that.
Thank you. I think, yeah, definitely, a true character of a person or an organization comes through in difficult times, and how you react to those situations. Uh, Mike, can you share with us your perspective on the same, of how, you were able to manage the health of the employees, and of course, you talked about how you were able to manage the business, but the health of the employees and things that you did to take care of them, and their well-being.
Well, as David said, it's very much, I mean, Metal Exchange is a family-owned company as well, but we emphasize to them that, this isn't us telling you to, you have to keep yourself safe. How do you want to keep yourself safe? Like I said, and there was a certain contingent of people who said, I'm 64 and I have had a heart condition, and they actually exited. And that's not easy because you're replacing a lot of experience. You've had somebody who's been doing something. And so that's been hard. But other than that, it's been, here's what we know, here's what we've heard. It's masks, it's cleaning, it's all the stuff you're talking about. But we don't claim to know it all. What's going to make you happy? What's going to make you safe? Because we want to keep this function. Your function is critical. How do we keep you functional? And so obviously, most of the time what came back was repetitive and redundant. Is the same thing. Well, I need this mask, or I need this. I can't go out. I don't want to go to the bank to put the documents there, whatever. And so it wasn't as hard to handle the actual physical changes that you had to make. It was all the stuff that you're seeing and hearing, as much, I think, as communicating with the employee, saying, what are you hearing? What's going to make you happy? What's going to make you safe? Because we want to keep you doing what you're doing. And so we actually kind of threw it back on them. Here's what we're doing. What else? And like I said, surprisingly seamless. We didn't have any trouble getting PPE for the plants. We didn't have any trouble. I mean, obviously the office is kind of mostly abandoned, except for people. There'd be 4 or 5 people there a day in an office that's massive. And so it's that part of it it's been more communication with the employees, doing the basic stuff, and then saying, what else? Communication, but being the key, saying, you tell us because we have confidence in you.
Nice, very good. What about you, Linda, from employee health perspective, things that you did at Genactive?
Right, health is first, not to get sick. So all the safety measures around the COVID, the social distancing, the cleaning, the shift, the mask, don't go on site until unless you have to go on site, right? That is that is the first layer. Then we quickly, people understood, we want to keep everyone safe. We are willing to compromise on productivity. People appreciate that. But then very quickly, there's something creeping on people's mind. Is this just now I'm isolated, especially for those scientists who are so much love to be in the lab working on the protein. Our greenhouse team today are taking care of the corn. People need to see the bugs. We raise a lot of bugs in order to figure out a way to best kill them. People have that uncertainty. It's like I see everything that's going, I don't see. Now what? That there's no shortcut. But like what Mike said, the communication. I would use myself as example. For family reasons, when I joined the Genactive, I've had the board agreed with me. I'm now moving my household, so I've already always had some work from home time. Honestly, I was the olden case before the pandemic. There are times I'm wondering what's going on in the company, but I need to trust the team. Everyone's adult professional, right? We all know what's the right thing to do. So I share that the pandemic actually helped me I feel like there are people who would understand how I do my job, because before I was the only one who's not on site every day. Now, so yeah. So I would just in our team meeting, I would let people know I completely understand what you've gone through, because I've been doing this for a while, but we will just have to trust each other in doing the right thing in the right time. And then another thing is family. Family definitely is important for everyone. It's not just our own health, but also our family's health, particularly in the household, like David mentioned, there are school-age kids. How do you handle that? Like, do I keep my kids home? But if I need to go to work, we always tell our people, don't ever let work get into your way to take care of your kids and the family. If you feel more comfortable to keep kids home for distant learning, we will figure out a way to make the workflow works. We just need to know, and we just need to talk about. We do have an employee who kept their kids for distant learning, and it worked out well. And we really encourage people to take time off if they don't feel good, if they feel sick. We actually doubled our sick days. We changed our policy. We doubled our sick days during the pandemic. Also, there is a benefit of being at home, like David mentioned. I didn't do all the international travel. My family of three, my son was just talking about this yesterday on Chinese New Year Eve. He said, "Mom, this is almost a year. We have been all day, all night together for a year." Because our last travel was March in his spring break. It was after my grand opening of the new headquarters. That's my schedule, my days. We went on the ski trip. Then Champaign has the first positive case reported. Illinois started to shut down, and we canceled. We basically ended our ski trip earlier because I want to be back with the team. I'm back to work. We're triggering our COVID action plan. We actually already developed that ahead of time. We just triggered that. I never had truly true. It's like almost every day we are having 3 meals all together. Never happened in my career. But I also personally found my life and work, the line become blurred. I'm someone, if I get into a piece of work, I can sit there for hours. And now I do not have to jump in my car to go somewhere. It's actually pretty dangerous. We found that from our team too. I have a very hardworking team. By close to the year end, I have to encourage people to take days off because my HR run the time for me. And I see, well, we still have lots of people didn't take a whole lot of vacation day. This is November. And then we say, well, really spend some time, take care of yourself and take care of your family. We always support a employee fitness program, which is if people go to gym, they buy membership, we reimburse to a certain amount. We say, that's okay. Nobody's going to the gym this year. We're just gonna gym equipment. Actually, it doesn't even matter. You go buy bought a pair of running shoes or some yoga apparel. So long as it is something, it counts. You bought an online program, someone can remind you, it's your morning yoga time, get up, that counts. So we changed the health club support program to just a fitness and awareness support program, really to try to make it a bit easier for people. So I don't think there's a silver bullet. You can just get all the trouble goes away. But a lot about I actually found on kind of supporting the health, and it's a lot of common sense.
Yeah.
What we can do, what we cannot do, and how do we be flexible, just adapting to the ever-changing COVID situation.
Thank you. All three of you are in very, very progressive companies and progressive leaders who definitely have put your people first. So it's admirable to see. And I'm sure it shows in your company's performance and in the employee morale. There are a lot of questions on, after pandemic, the experiences after pandemic and the direction after the applying the learnings of the pandemic. And I just want to remind all the participants that there is going to be a separate panel just discussing about all that. And so we will defer to that panel, and Gerald and the International Business School can give you I'm sure they have advertised it and you can get the links to it. We will close with one last question. And that is, what advice do you have for students, looking for jobs during the pandemic and how they should go about contacting companies and trying to find job openings, etc. So I'll start with you, David.
Yeah, come talk to me. We're hiring. Yeah, I saw we are, and that's been a consistent throughout this. And so we have internship programs that we started several years ago, and I'd say for the office, that's been our primary recruiting method is working through internships. In our industry, it's pretty specific with electric utility components manufacturing. There's very few specific college programs for that. And so it's something that people come in and they're like, what the heck is this thing? This is a gray box that you call a transformer. And so it's something that we work with internships to say, this is what we do, this is who we are, this is how we work. And then we get to know the students as well. So that's been our primary way of recruiting from college or from universities. But overall, I would say that it's, and Linda alluded to this as well, is that companies are still hiring. We're still looking for dedicated and motivated employees. Working with UMSL, doing a mentoring program there. And I know that there are a lot of good professionals that are coming out of the system. I'm proud to be a part of it. I think that the challenging part is, how do you show that your academic learnings were applied in some sort of a professional environment that we can put to work on day one. Even things, marketing students. So I run the sales and marketing side of things. And one of the challenges we have is that marketing students come in and say, hey, I can put together a social media page. That's good, but every marketing student can do that. So what differentiates you? How can you work on a marketing program? How can we step back and talk about audience and what's their pain point? How are we going to solve that? How do we put together entire marketing programs that get us to that social media side of content dispersion? Engineering, how do you become more aware of the business side of things? How do you get more involved with the business acumen of making those decisions? So I think that's where an internship can really help you to understand those needs, working in an office environment. Again, most companies are working remote. We're not doing that for our office. We are going in with some strict precautions, but we're working in an office environment. And I know this is beyond the question, Shaker, so please forgive me, but it's a big question I get asked all the time is, there's a lot of employees that feel like they are more productive working at home. And I can understand that. And I get that, because there's fewer disruptions or disturbances. As an employer, I've come to largely disagree with that perspective. I think for the employee, they feel more efficient and more effective because they're able to look at a task and to get it done. That's good, it's important. But all of those disturbances of interacting with your colleagues, of talking to the people around you, of overhearing conversations in the office where your colleagues are talking about another topic that is relevant and useful for you. That's all important stuff. Developing the relationships. You're at work, and I know you all work together, but you still have relationships. And so you need to make deposits into that relationship bank so you can ask for things to come back. You need a favor, you need a question answered. You need to withdraw from that relationship bank. And so I think long-term, this working remote is exceptionally difficult from an efficiency and efficacy perspective in a workplace environment.
Thank you, David. Mike, I would advise to students looking for a job.
Well, I would just reiterate what David says, that the hiring has not stopped. It has been consistently difficult in the United States to find good people for the last 4, 5, 6 years. So if you've got a student that is coming out saying, well, you know, I've got an academic record, that's, as David said, that's fine. But I would say this would be the time to do something you probably should have been doing anyway, which is do a lot of research on the companies you're interested in. Know what they do for a living, know where the pain points might be, know where the pressure points, so that when you do have that interview, even if it's like this online, you can ask a question that shows you've got enough interest in that company to start to say, explain to me, David, when you need to buy brass to make a part out of it, how do you do that? The fact that you've done the research, that you're looking at the company, you're asking a specific question, just makes you so much more likely to get invited back for a further interview. I would say that. Do research till you can't do more research, because somewhere in that interview, at the end of the interview, the person interviewed is going to say, and do you have any questions? And you should say, oh, do I have questions? And so that you've got 3 or 4 critical questions you can ask that were not answered in the interview. And that is just the fact that you've looked at them is going to make you much more likely to get talked back. That, and just kind of what Linda was saying, flexibility. I know you want a job doing this, I'm going to make you an online presence. But if we find you in that interview to have a skill set, a soft skill, a people skill, a teamwork skill, we might say, you know, we were talking about this, but what would you think if we put you to work over here? You got to be flexible to say, yeah, to explain that to me. I'd like to hear about that. Maybe that works. So don't go in with that. Go in doing all your research. Have some flexibility when they want to talk about it.
Thank you. And Linda, if you could give us your perspective on how advice to students looking for jobs.
Sure, I actually already gave the number 1. Have the confidence on yourself. Companies are hiring. Just and one fact, I graduated in 2004. I was looking for my first job in America when the unemployment rate is almost close to 10%. And I was an international student, needed H-1B. So put that onto add another factor of challenge or complication. So I think just always believing in yourself, knowing there's always good opportunity for good people. That is pandemic or not, or financial crisis or not, that is just something always helpful. And the second point is just more build on what Mike said. The attention to detail and show a genuine interest does matter. I would encourage you only apply to the jobs. Here's my principle. I'm not going to apply for a job if I'm not convincing myself that if they gave me an offer, I would take it. Because whether you're truly interested or not, whether you're genuine or not, it will show up somehow in the process. And now I'm sitting on both sides of the table. I've interviewed a lot of people. The interviewer somehow will be able to see that either through your application or through the interview, how you prepared, whether you ask question or not. And then don't stumble on the little things, like if the job post said, send your application to this email address. If it's on LinkedIn or on Indeed or whatever, don't just go automatically click that apply, because we see a lot of people just doing, it seems like they're just automatically apply. Well, it really says send a cover letter, because that is one way for employer to tell, is this person even interested enough to even write a cover letter, say why I'm interested in you. The last one is pandemic related. I do think companies are looking for people who are more demonstrate flexible agility, and I'd also think a little bit risk taking. Pandemic risk is an uncertainty, right? COVID bring a lot more uncertainty into our life. People wondering whether I want to change a job, whether I want to go out of my home to go for that interview. What if I don't get an on-site opportunity? Would I ever accept a job? I would say one thing I was very, very proud about our hiring process is through the 360 interview process in my team, when we hire, we have that person interview with all the key interactions in the on the job, with the view to really make sure we identify the two-way fit. I also see interview is a two-way selection. So when we go into that interview, keep that in mind. You are also selecting the employer as well. I found one thing I'm very proud is both the candidates and our interviewers quickly built that trust, which is actually the first element in the genetic culture. Is can we, through this interview process, quickly found that chemistry and that trust we have on each other. I mentioned we have many people, they decided to take a job, move the family without even being on site. And that is some quite a bit of risk taking on their side. And at the same time, Genactive took some risk as well. We decided to hire someone without even see the people. But I would say you still have all the ways you can help yourself to mitigate the risk. Like Mike said, do a lot of search. There's all kinds of information you can find on the websites. Talk with your connection. You never know. One of the person who came to work for me is also gone through. This is actually the person who has been working for Genactive for 3 months, finally had one on-site opportunity. He said, I talked with someone who used to talk with you. So I know you're real. The company is probably real. Good luck with the job search.
Thank you, Linda, and thanks to all three of the panelists, for taking time from your busy schedule to join us this morning. And thanks to all the participants too for participating, and of course to the International Business School, Renita, Gerald, and Agnieszka for helping us, participate and coordinate this whole event. So thank you all. Good luck to you, and wish you the very best. And thanks to the panel too. Take care.